Hi everyone, welcome to another fireside chat from GoodData.AI. My name is Fedoročko, I'm a field CTO, and today I'm here with Ryan Hefner, our principal software engineer.
Hey, good to be with you.
Hey Ryan, we spent a lot of time on the customer sites together or individually, and we were driving home from one of the customers last week, and you had this very nice observation about what is the main theme of 2026. So can you tell us something about it?
Yeah, it seemed like everything that we were talking about in all of those workshops that we had were skills, 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 and skills. How do we use skills? What are they? How do we enable teams with them? And so I think I mentioned to you, it feels like we are experiencing 2026 as the year of skillification.
Yeah. Californication was my favorite song and then my favorite TV show when we were young. So now it's all about the skillification. Yeah, cool. But
it was just, it struck me that in the room that we were in, there were some people that knew exactly what skills were and were already starting to think about the problems that they were coming up with in terms of what kind of skills can I create to solve these problems. And some people were coming in and were like, I have no idea what a skill was. I thought it was, you walked into a room of 40 people, some of them were technical, some of them weren't, and your job was, let's explain AI and skills. What did you say? How did you educate the audience about what skills were?
Yeah, that's true. And we actually were struggling with it a lot at the beginning. But then I think, what we saw it's working for us are like the free versions, right? When I should explain this to someone who's not very technical, I would probably go with the definition that my mom would understand. Skill is nothing more than a recipe, right? It basically says how you should bake the cake, right? What the agent should do if they need to get to some results. And then for the more technical people, and how I saw skills from the beginning was something like the way how we build a modern software. You're not writing everything from scratch. You're basically using the libraries. And then you are npm install them if you are if you are in a JavaScript environment to your project, right? Which gives you a consistent way how the piece of the software should operate, and you build the new software basically by composing these libraries. And I know one of our great friends, Chase, he loves the example that we were using around the Christmas time when obviously this is more for a metrics fans, but if you think about the Neo and how he learned kung fu, it was he's something like an agent, right? And then he's not the agent in the metrics terms, right? Because the agents are something else in the metrics. But basically, if he's an agent, right, then he plugs in this cable, and basically they upload this software to his head, which basically taught him how to do kung fu, right? So he wakes up and he says, I know kung fu. And this is exactly what are skills in the context of agent. You describe a particular skill, a particular capability in a text form, and then basically you give it to the agent, and then the agent wakes up and say, now I know I have the skill, right?
Yeah. I think the really cool thing about that is, especially when we were with this particular customer, the team that we were working with was the team that was responsible for implementing GoodData, but they're also on the cutting edge of AI within that company. And so when we sat down with them and they were thinking about a particular project that they wanted to tackle, we said, oh, well, you can think about this in terms of skills. We were thinking about migrating some existing data into GoodData. And we thought, well, what if we created a skill called create visualization, and we created a skill called create dashboard. The customer already had all of their data modeled, and so we created those skills and we asked the agent, hey, build us a dashboard that responds to this particular user's question. The idea was they would be able to ask a question, a one-off question, and get kind of a disposable dashboard with a question or with visualizations that were answering the question. And it worked. And it was really surprising. I mean, not as much to us because we've seen this done a lot, but to the customer, it was really surprising to see everything come together, and it was with their tooling, their technology, their GoodData instance in a way that could be replicated the next week. And I think that was a really powerful unlock for them to think about skills in this way. And during the course of the development of those skills, we also ran into problems. We had version 1 of the skill, and then it didn't work, and it did something incorrectly. And what did we do? At the end of the session with the agent, we said, take a look through this chat history and take some generalized learnings and update the skill.
Yeah.
And so we have this idea of self-learning, which is interesting. It's an interesting property of your skill just being a markdown recipe of what to do. Is that person A can learn, and then person B can try it, and then they can update the skill. And you have your whole team working together to make it the best possible version it could be.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned an interesting thing, development of the skills. And I think I want to stay a little bit on the skills, because when we think about it, we mentioned recipes, we mentioned NPM packages, right? We mentioned the cable and software that goes into Neo's head. But what is more, and you mentioned development of the skills, but what is the most surprising for me, and I think this scares a lot of people, is that they have to do some development. But at the end of the day, as with everything in AI, the only way how you can actually influence agents or the AI is through the text. So skills, I think it's very important to mention, and this is something when I see like people do the site. It's nothing more than a text. It's a text file, right? So what are some examples of the skills, right? So we can also bring and maybe clarify for people who are listening to our fireside chat today, like what are the examples of the skills, maybe in general public, and then maybe something, I can speak about something like what we do in analytics with the skills.
Yeah, I mean, one example just from us in Good Data about how we use skills to support customers is our support team, when someone files a ticket, they need to do some kind of investigation, and the team has been doing this for as long as Good Data has existed. What they do is they look at what the customer reported, and then they look at logs and metrics. They look inside of our code base to try to figure out if it's a bug or if it's some edge case that we didn't take care of, and then they formulate some kind of response. And so we've built a whole range of skills for our whole support team to use that standardizes this process. And it doesn't replace the human, but it takes a first look through all of the things and says, hey, here are some things that you should pay attention to. And the best part about it is that the strongest support engineers can really refine these skills, and then the people who are just joining the team can stand on the shoulders of giants. That they can start their investigations and have all of these things to start with. Okay,
so the problems that skills are solving is actually that everyone is using the same LLM. So every agent has the same knowledge. But then when you, for example, do your triage, or when you are working with the customers and you want to teach the agent something that you would have to explain to the agent in the prompt. You don't want to repeat it, right? Because it's a lot of typing. You don't want to, every time you would define it a little differently, so it wouldn't be consistent. So the advantage, and I think why the industry is so excited about and why everyone wants to skillify this day, is that, you know, they have this standard operational procedures that they do in the company, and they want to put it into prompt every time. And someone write it in this way and someone else write it in that way. They want to actually create the files for the individual skills and then give all the agents the same skill, literally, which ensures that the agents will behave consistently no matter what LLMs you are using, right? But also, what are some of the other benefits? Like, obviously, it's not only about I write it down and I don't need to retype it in a prompt. So what are the other benefits that you see of the skills, and why people are so excited about it?
Yeah, I mean, context is king, right? If you put the right context in, you're going to get a much better result out. And so that is one of the trickiest parts about using LLMs well, and that separates the people who have been who are really advanced from the people who are just beginning, is what kind of context I give it. But from a Good Data specific perspective, I know that you had some conversations with a couple of customers recently where you were talking about some use cases. Tell me about those.
Yeah, so obviously everyone's thinking about how to automate. At the end of the day, agents is nothing more than intelligent process automation. So everyone's thinking about how to actually, create these intelligent process automations, these agents, but also make sure that they work in their company, right? And they are looking mostly, in our case, through the analytical lens. So how we can actually, instead of working with the dashboards, basically have agents that can read the dashboards for us, create maybe a presentation or a summary, and then send it to and distribute it. Because this will be, obviously, this is not just a plain process automation. This requires some level of automation. How do you analyze the data? How do you interpret the results? right? We see a lot of cases around automated analytics, which is something that I have been trying to do in 10 years prior to the LLMs, right? It was always very hard because it was a combination of the machine learning and the brute force. And the only thing that was missing was the intelligence, right? And now you can actually bring the intelligence so the agent can better decide, how to proceed when they are doing this analysis. But obviously, they cannot just tap into their LLM knowledge, right? Because every company is different. Every customer has a different way how they want to interpret the results, how they want to actually go about analyzing the dashboards, creating this presentation. And this is exactly a low-hanging fruits for this skillification, right? Write a skills how to do a QBR, how to create a skill, how to create a brief, a customer brief, create a skill about how to analyze the anomalies and how to notify us through different channels, right? So we will actually get into this automation, which is the only way how you can actually get the data from AI, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about the coding, why everyone's so excited about AI coding, and there is a lot of automation, and there it brings a lot of value. And we are thinking about how we can actually bring this experience into the analytics. So it's about having a single source of standard operational procedure, right? Not every employee in the company would write their own prompt how the summary should be done. We have the single source that defines how the summarization should be done.
Yep.
Another thing is it's customized, right? So the LLM can actually tap into our knowledge and our instructions compared to going with their own internal decisions how the LLM would operate. Versioning, right? You can start the V1, which is something that we done at the customer side. In 71 minutes, you were able to write the first skills. I assume, and no offense, that they were not the best skills. This is definitely not the production one, right? But it's a V1.
Yes.
And then you give it to the customers, it's already working, and they can start fine-tuning it with V2, V3, V4, and so on and so on. And there's something that I want to talk about you later on, because I think there is the biggest improvements in the future. So versioning, composability, right? You can build a more complex skills by composing a smaller skills, right? So you have how to analyze the visualization, how to query the data, maybe how to create the presentation, and then you can actually compose it into a QBR skill, which will tap into these individual skills and then do the higher level automation for you.
Based on your story, it seems like the things that are good candidates for skills is something that a company is already having people do that's repetitive, that is a pretty well-defined process with well-defined data that they need to access, and then they do something. Is that true? Is that how you think about it?
It's true, because at the end of the day, as I said, it's a process automation, but it needs to be intelligent. So imagine, I think the best candidate is the work that was not able to be automated up until now, because you will not be able to write these workflows with all the decision trees, or to cover all the edge cases, because the workflow would look so complex that people would lost, and it would be so hard to maintain. But since you can use actually LLMs to make this decision, you can instead of creating this very deterministic workflow, you can actually describe it in a skill. What is skill is just a description of the workflow, but you are giving this rough edges to the AI where it can basically make its own decisions.
So I'm going to do a one-off brainstorm of some business strategy, and I'm going to do it once every 6 months. Probably not a great candidate for a skill, but I'm going to do a QBR with every customer in my portfolio once every 3 months. That's a much better, because there's a process around it, and there's needs to be some standardization. And oh, by the way, it's not just me, but it's my whole team that's doing this for all of their customers, right?
Yeah. I think there's potential even in this one-off strategy, right? Because you can have this small skills that describes basically what is your company culture, right? Or how you should think about markets, right? And these can be a small skills. Even us in our product marketing team, for example, we have small skills about how to run the webinars, how to create white papers, and so on and so on, right? So yes, these are more repetitive things, but then on the strategy level, when we are thinking about a strategy, we have our skills that make sure that when we are actually brainstorming the strategy and creating the strategy with AI, it also has some skills that it can tap into.
Cool.
Last but not least, I think a very important thing of the skills, and you mentioned it, context is a king. but also context costs a lot of tokens, right? And imagine that you want an agent to have a lot of skills, and you put it all into a system prompt, and then this system prompt is sent to the LLM every time you ask it, right? And that would be very, very expensive. And we need to be also cognizant about the cost, right? And the beautiful thing about skills is that you can actually give into the context to the agent the skill registry, like these are the skills you have. And then the agent can activate the individual skills based on what it needs to do, which is the way how we designed our Agentic AI assistant. So every time you work with our chat, it has a skills registry. It knows what kind of skills you have. And our customers has a full control about what skills they turn on for the individual agents. So even though everyone's getting the same agent for us, they can customize it on the level and they can govern what kind of skills their individual agent will have. We are saving them tokens, and then the LLM is able to activate the skills on demand based on what it needs. Do I need to query the data? I'll tap into the skill about the querying data. Do I need to create a visualization? I'll tap into the skill of creating visualization. And you don't need to send like the whole description about how to create visualization in a GoodData in every system prompt.
Yeah. And that was the cool thing about the example that we were talking about before, creating the skills for this customer, was they were able to use the GoodData CLI. They downloaded the metadata of their whole workspace just as YAML files.
Yep.
I mean, GoodData has been doing this for years and years before LLMs were really a thing. And basically, the LLM is then able to decide. It has a map of everything, all of the files and the dashboards and visualizations and metrics of your workspace, and the LLM itself can decide what do I need to load into context and what I don't need to, rather than just doing MCP or API calls and getting a bunch of data and then having it be a really context-heavy session. And so that's one example of how the GoodData CLI can help doing development on GoodData, reduce the amount of context and make things faster and cheaper.
Yeah. Cool. I have two more questions for you, Ryan.
Yeah.
You obviously coined this term skillification in our company, but do you think, like, as with everything in AI, is it just another hype, skills? Because I have been checking YouTube last week and I saw a video titled "Agents Are Dead, the Future is Skills." So, and MCP, we know, like, we had a webinar about is MCP dead, right? So, is skill a hype that will go away and we'll just go with like a system prompts and MCPs again, or this is something that you think it's a good architecture and people should start really investing into skills and skillification of their companies and their businesses?
That's a really good question. So my humble opinion is that the concept of a skill, which is a portable unit of knowledge that's modeling a process that can be repeated over and over and shared among the team, that's here to stay. I don't think we can ever go away from that. But I do think that the underlying technologies that we use are going to change. I don't necessarily mean the LLMs, but right now, your options for sharing skills are you download a Markdown file and send it to your colleagues on Slack. That's not great because it doesn't stay up to date. You can commit things into a Git repo, but then that's great for engineers who are working in a code base, but how does that translate to non-technical users?
I'm pretty sure business users don't know what is a Git, right?
Yeah, but like an AI agent can help bridge the gap so the user doesn't have to run Git commands in the CLI, but still it's a leaky abstraction. At some point they're going to see a CLI command or some technical thing or some Git error that happens. And so I think that the tooling underneath to share skills and to be able to work with data is probably going to evolve. But again, the concept of a skill, I think, is here to stay.
And I think I have seen a lot of projects like Skills.sh, which is like a public, kind of a GitHub for skills that are already emerging. So the collaboration, the discoverability of skills is already easier. It's not perfect, but there are definitely glimpses. When I last checked, there was almost 100,000 skills already committed to Skills.sh, right? So you see that that's something that's definitely popping up, and the tooling around this is evolving. Also, when we think about skills in GoodData, the things that we just launched 3 weeks ago, when we talk about it, the agent builder that lets you actually configure what kind of skills your agent has, this is where you are basically blacklisting the skills that we already offer. But what we hear from our customers, and I think what is the future of the agent builder inside GoodData, is that customers want to bring their own skills.
Yeah.
Because when they ask us the question, where should they create the skills? I think the recommendation that we are always giving them, and I think that's important for everyone, skills is your intellectual property. It's a document that you should own, but then you should decide into which platform you put it, right? Obviously, collaboration is another thing, but if you give it to an OpenAI agent, the OpenAI agent will be able to, do your standard operational procedures. If you give it to Anthropic, their agents will be able to operate according to your instructions. If you give it to Foundry, their agents will be able to operate, right? So we are always saying, look, this is a file that you should own, and then you should bring it to GoodData, to OpenAI, to Anthropic, to Microsoft, and so on and so on. And whatever agentic framework will win in the future.
So you would say that maybe most of our companies should take a look at the skills that we ship within GoodData and use them as inspiration for skills that they create on their own for their specific use case. Do I understand that right?
Yeah. I think the ambition we set in Q1 here with our product team was that we want to be the largest repository of the analytic skills. So obviously GoodData wants to develop all the analytical skills. And this is what we want to offer to our customers through GoodData agents. But then every our customers has a need for a very special, right? We have a customer from a public safety. They are doing a very special investigation over the data. So this is something, the way how they will be able to bring their special skills into a GoodData platform, the same way that they can bring this skill actually to any other agents there. And we tap into the future, and I think, the last thing that I wanted to ask you, or we can do like predictions, right? Let's do also some predictions. What do you think is the future of the skills? Maybe 1 or 2 predictions, and then I'll try to do we will see if they are equal or if we have a diverging opinions about the future, and that will be the last one.
Like I said, I think that the form factor is going to look really different, and I think that we're going to have some, people say UI is dead. I don't think that UI is dead. I think that purpose-built UIs are going to be more and more popular. Yeah. Like, I have a business problem. Let me create this throwaway UI to be able to configure something. I think that skills are going to stay. I think that they're going to become more and more usable for not just engineers in a coding workflow, but for business users that are, just doing mundane things, writing emails, doing some correspondence, doing some kind of investigations around their customers, whatever it could be. Yeah. That's where I see the next 6 months or a year. And of course, as LLMs continue to grow, the more powerful these things become.
Yeah.
What do you think?
We tapped already into it, and we also hear it from our customers. We were speaking that one of the benefits of the skills being a document is the versioning, right? You created this V1 version, which was not optimal, but then the customer can take it through the V2, V3, V4. Obviously, as everything in AI needs to self-evolve, otherwise it's going to be a bottleneck, right? So one thing that we see already, and I think this is the biggest trend of a couple of last months, is a self-learning / self-improving skills, where basically AI is observing. So the first thing is obviously human in the loop, right? I have my skills. I am, for example, coding or analyzing the data, and I see how the agent is performing, and I actually need to steer its direction, which means that probably it doesn't tap into the knowledge, or the instructions in the skills were not correct. So I correct it, but then I say, update the skills, so the next time you will actually proceed like that, because you are not able to cover all the edge cases on a first shot. But then when you encounter these edge cases, you can actually say to agent, now self-improve or improve your skill right now, so you don't make the same mistake or diverging basically direction next time. Then another opinion is obviously the other evolution step is obviously I don't have to say it. The agent basically observes, which is where we see a lot of our customers' head being right now. Obviously, how we give them these skills, how we give them these AI memories, but they don't want to curate them, right? Everyone's getting too comfortable. They basically want another agent that is observing the memories, the interactions, and then in self-improving the memories and the skills. And when I should guess in the future, why to write any skills at all, right? The agent can just observe what I'm doing. and then basically just do the skills on their own, right?
But there's some observability there.
Yeah.
Even if the skill is never written by the human, even if the agent is the one that's continuously rewriting it, you can look in and say, well, what is this process that this proactive agent that's running every day in response to some events happening in my company, a new Slack message in a customer channel, a new deal that's closed, what is that agent actually doing? I think like the guardrails are also really important to make sure that it's not just repeatable, but it's repeatable to the standard that our company has.
Okay.
We're not, maybe an agent is not supposed to go and automatically write an email to a customer. Maybe it's supposed to be working in the background and surfacing recommendations for a human to do that. Every company is going to have a different risk profile according to this. But I think it's probably pretty important for a human to be able to always be able to read those instructions and figure out exactly what the bounds are.
Yeah. So auto-generated skills with some guardrails in place, making sure that, you know...
Proactive agents that have no guardrails is probably a recipe for disaster.
Well, yeah. I think that was a really nice ending. Ryan, I have one. Thank you for your attention, for your time and attention today. I think that was a very valuable discussion for me. I have one last question on you. If someone finds this discussion, this fireside chat inspiring, they haven't written any skills yet, and they just want to start right now because they see already in their heads the use cases that they can start Skillify and do their own skillification in the business, what should they do? What do you recommend as our skills master here in GoodData?
I think I would start with a process that you personally do, and it takes you more than 30 minutes. And you've done it a bunch of times. So you know exactly what data you need, you know how to do the process, and most importantly, you'll be able to judge the output from V1 of the skills. Yeah. If it's something that you've never done before, you have no idea if the output is good or not. You'll just ship it to the rest of your team and say, what do you think? Yeah. So that's what I would start with. And just sit down with your agent. Some agents like Claude has an agent builder skill, or a skill builder skill.
Skill builder skill.
With some best practices for formatting skills. But you don't need that. You can just type, hey, I want to build a skill. And even if you have the voice mode, I think that's the best thing, that you just sit down for 10 minutes and you describe using your voice exactly how you do this process, and then say, build me a skill.
Okay.
And then you'll have V1, and then you can try it out and see if it works. And then you could do this self-learning loop where it took me 10 tries to get it to the right place, take some generalized learnings, build me V2, and then try it again. And hopefully you'll get to a point where it's pretty good.
So it's as easy as opening the text editor and start typing some description of the process, or going to Claude and say like, hey, use your skills creating skills to actually help me create a skill, or basically just ask AI to create a skill and it will somehow figure it out through the voice or through the text, like what it should create.
Exactly.
So easy. Cool. Ryan, thanks one more time for your attention. Yeah. I hope everyone enjoyed this fireside chat. You learned a little bit about the skills. If you haven't written any skills, you feel motivated, you know what are the skills, how to use them. You already had some ideas in your head, you know how to start. So thanks for your attention. And if you need any help, please reach to us. We will be more than happy. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn for more updates. Thanks everyone, and thanks Ryan one more time.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.